Bueno, muy buenos días a todas las personas que nos acompañan. Tenemos casa llena. Les damos la más cordial bienvenida a esta conferencia que tenemos hoy, este evento, denominada Tutoría Individual para Estudiantes Consideradas en Riesgo, Principios aplicables derivados de la educación superior de Reino Unido, la cual será impartida por el doctor Ben Walker. Saludamos a quienes nos acompañan en el auditorio, Luis Lara Tapia, así también a quienes se conectan por el canal de YouTube de la facultad. En este evento, el día de hoy, nos acompañan en la mesa dos directivas de la facultad, la doctora Magda Campillo, directora de la Facultad de Psicología, para quien pido un fuerte aplauso. También nos acompaña la maestra Hilda Paredes, jefa de la División de Estudios Profesionales. Y adicionalmente nos acompaña la doctora Benilde García Cabrero, quien es la coordinadora del programa Aprendizaje, Servicio e Innovación Pedagógica. Tendremos a nuestro invitado, el doctor Ben Walker, a quien leeremos su introducción en un momento. Y quiero comentarles cuál va a ser la dinámica de esta sesión. Bueno, mi nombre es Leydy Erazo, soy docente de esta facultad también e integrante del programa de aprendizaje-servicio, que es de donde se está organizando este evento el día de hoy. Entonces, la sesión, como va a estar organizada el día de hoy, es que en un primer momento escucharemos las palabras de bienvenida de nuestra directora, la doctora Magda Campillo. Luego tendremos unas palabras de la doctora Benilde García Cabrero y en un segundo momento nos centraremos en la conferencia magistral que impartirá el doctor Ben Walker para finalmente un breve espacio de diálogo, de preguntas que tenga el público y posteriormente cerraremos este acto con un mensaje de la maestra Hilda Paredes como jefa de la División de Estudios Profesionales. También para informarles, esta conferencia se llevará en inglés y como verán en la parte superior habrá un traductor simultáneo para inglés, lo que sea en español verán extrañas palabras ahí. Entonces cuando esté hablando en inglés el doctor va a aparecer la traducción simultánea en la parte superior para acompañar la comprensión de esta conferencia. Entonces, sin más, paso a dar la palabra a la doctora Magda Campillo, directora de esta facultad. Doctora, por favor.
Pues, muy buenos días a todos y a todas. No saben qué alegría es ver un auditorio lleno en un viernes previo a vacaciones, lleno de estudiantes, así que eso creo que nos habla de la importancia que tiene este tema. Pues es un gusto darles la bienvenida a la Facultad de Psicología de la UNAM y a esta conferencia magistral. Bueno, nos acompaña el doctor Ben Walker del Oxford Center for Academic Enhancement and Development de la Universidad de Oxford Brookes, Reino Unido. Dr. Ben, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you with us today. Su presencia entre nosotros es un verdadero placer y representa una oportunidad invaluable para nuestra facultad. Su visita responde a nuestra convicción de que en un mundo en constante transformación donde las y los estudiantes enfrentan desafíos académicos, emocionales y sociales cada vez más complejos, no podemos limitarnos a lo conocido. Necesitamos aprender, adaptarnos e innovar. La tutoría, especialmente aquella dirigida hacia estudiantes en situación de riesgo, constituye un espacio fundamental para la construcción de trayectorias formativas exitosas y significativas. Por ello, en la UNAM la hemos consolidado como una política prioritaria y en nuestra facultad la hemos fortalecido mediante modalidades flexibles y un enfoque integral. Escuchar y dialogar con especialistas como el Dr. Walker nos permite enriquecer nuestras prácticas, cuestionar nuestros modelos y robustecer este acompañamiento esencial. Agradezco profundamente a la doctora Benilde García y a todo su equipo de trabajo, quien coordina el programa de aprendizaje e innovación pedagógica, por impulsar este espacio de diálogo transatlántico y agradezco también a todas y a todos ustedes por sumarse a esta reflexión tan necesaria. Dr. Ben, as I said, we're very happy to have you here. It's been an honor, and I'm sure that we're going to have plenty of opportunities to share experiences. So welcome.
Agradecemos a la doctora Campillo sus palabras y damos paso a la doctora Benilde García, coordinadora del programa de aprendizaje, servicio e innovación pedagógica. APSIP.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días a todas, a todos. Gracias por acompañarnos a esta conferencia. Voy a dar lectura a una semblanza del doctor Ben Walker. El doctor Walker es doctor en educación por la Oxford Brookes University. Asimismo, cuenta con un certificado de posgrado en educación para la educación obligatoria por la Universidad de Huddersfield y un máster en escritura moderna y contemporánea por la Universidad de Sheffield. También tiene una licenciatura en humanidades de la Universidad de Humberside y actualmente está haciendo formación multidisciplinar que se enfoca en una aproximación holística y relacional hacia la enseñanza, el aprendizaje y el acompañamiento estudiantil en diversos contextos educativos. El doctor Walker es profesor senior en desarrollo educativo en el Oxford Center for Academic Enhancement and Development de la Oxford Brookes University. Tiene más de 20 años de experiencia en docencia y formación del profesorado. Es ampliamente reconocido como un referente profesional, académico y divulgador de los campos de la tutoría personal y la asesoría académica. Sus aportaciones incluyen textos de gran influencia para profesionales, artículos revisados por pares, conferencias magistrales internacionales y roles de liderazgo en iniciativas de desarrollo profesional a nivel sectorial. En Oxford Brookes University, el Dr. Walker desempeña el cargo de responsable estratégico de la oferta institucional de desarrollo profesional en asesoría académica y también es formador y facilitador en el programa Explore, que es la vía de reconocimiento profesional de la universidad, diseñada para ayudar al personal académico y profesional a preparar solicitudes basadas en evidencia para obtener distintos niveles de fellowship en un programa que se llama Advance HE. Es editor general también de Teaching Insights, la publicación universitaria dedicada a la enseñanza y el aprendizaje. En sus publicaciones más recientes, el Dr. Walker ha avanzado en la profesionalización y la certificación conceptual de la tutoría personal, definiendo las competencias y estándares necesarios para fortalecer este rol en las instituciones. Ha investigado desafíos persistentes en la práctica tutorial como expectativas poco claras de qué se espera de los tutores, implementación desigual y apoyo formativo limitado también para los tutores. Y ha propuesto modelos relacionales, proactivos y centrados en el estudiantado para afrontar estos problemas. Su trabajo también ofrece directrices claras y fundamentales para académicos en las primeras etapas de su carrera, destacando la práctica reflexiva, la empatía y las estrategias pedagógicas que fomentan la confianza, el vínculo y el progreso académico. En conjunto, sus contribuciones han ayudado a configurar las concepciones contemporáneas de la tutoría personalizada o tutoría personal como una práctica esencial y académicamente fundamentada en la educación superior. El liderazgo sostenido, la investigación y el compromiso profesional del Dr. Walker lo han consolidado como una figura clave en el avance de la tutoría personalizada y la asesoría académica a nivel nacional e internacional. Y damos la bienvenida al doctor. Gracias.
Thank you very, very much to Hilda, to Magda, and to Benilde for this very, very warm welcome. And the translation is working, great. And thank you so much to all of you for coming as well. It's great to see so many students here. The presentation that I am doing, some of the language is directed at tutors. but tutoring is very important for students. So we're very, very pleased you are here and to gather your views and to see what you think about how we can make tutoring effective. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you. It's a mobile, yeah. I don't stand behind lecterns, sorry. So, I'm talking today about personal tutoring for at-risk students. And the subtitle of the presentation is Transferable Principles from UK Higher Education. So myself and some other colleagues worked with different universities in Britain, in the UK. We also worked with some universities in Europe. It's okay? Yeah. And we worked with universities, interestingly, in Australia and Greece and Spain. And our experience is that many of the challenges... Oh, okay.
Microphone. Okay, yeah.
With the translation? Hello, hello. Is the translation working? Yeah? Okay. It's better? I have a loud voice, sorry. So, I'm talking about transferable principles from UK higher education because we started working quite locally with 1 or 2 universities in Britain. Then we worked with more universities within Britain. And it was very interesting that many of the challenges and opportunities and issues that we face when it comes to tutoring were actually shared almost across the world, across Europe, in Australia, in different countries. So this is quite interesting. Before today, I've been working at UABC in Mexicali, Tijuana, and Ensenada. And it seems a lot of the questions is quite similar to exactly what British and English tutors also ask. So hopefully, we have very different situations and context, very different countries, but the principles are hopefully transferable and shared. Okay, so you've heard enough about me already, and as I said, I work for Oxford Brookes University, and I'm working with UNAM and UABC. And the topics that I'm talking about today is mainly about at-risk students, and the framework from which I draw this, from which this topic arises, is based on these 4 books, which was, they came from when I first became a teacher. Tutoring was very forgotten, yeah, not really mentioned, not really supported. It didn't really have any importance. So myself and colleagues decided to try and publish some books to give practical help based on research for effective personal tutoring, and also how we might implement that at an institutional level. Because I used to be an English teacher. When I first became a teacher 25 years ago, all the focus was about teaching my subject. And on my timetable, I had something called tutoring, but nobody told me what I had to do. So we're trying to fill this gap in the literature and this gap in practice through these books. I'm not here to sell a book, but we are producing a new one in 2025 and then an international case study. We'd be very pleased if we had some Mexican contributions to that case study collection, which is going to be in the near future. So in terms of what I'm going to be talking about today, there are 4 main sections. What do we mean by at risk? This is an interesting 2-word phrase in English. I think it is a bit of a problematic phrase because sometimes it can make us maybe a bit stereotypical of students. However, it is the phrase that we use, and nobody yet has come up with a better one. And this is the common phrase that's mainly used for this topic. So we need to think a bit about what do we mean by at risk. The main part of the presentation, the content, is about methods to keep your students on track and to re-engage your students. So practical ideas that help us be proactive in supporting students through tutoring. This is the main part of the presentation. And then towards the end of the presentation, we look at fictional student personas, because we need to maintain confidentiality, and particular student scenarios, and think about how applying those ideas, think about how those ideas may apply to real issues with students. And then lastly, I'm going to be asking you to think about tutoring at UNAM for students at risk, to do some analysis, some implementation, maybe towards the end of the session today, but also importantly to get you thinking today. And this is something that we'll be doing in the future and that Benilde is very interested in implementing and enhancing here at UNAM. The format is I will be talking mainly, but I would like you to individually reflect and do a little bit of writing, if you can. And then we have quite a bit of time. We have quite a lot of time at the end for question and answer. Okay, so translation is okay? Great. So when we teach lessons, we use learning outcomes. So just for today, the learning outcomes of this session is it aims to help you explore the key principles of monitoring student progress and supporting at-risk students as a tutor, department, and institution, to apply these principles to example student scenarios, and produce a plan to implement in your own, the department, and the university's work. So this is what we are going to try and achieve. The first thing I would like you to do, if you feel able and if you are willing, is to write down what you think your most important question about tutoring is. This is a big question, but you have to write on a very small piece of paper. So I need you to keep it very, very brief. Also, if you would like, what are your hopes and what are your fears about tutoring? We will revisit these at the end of the session, but we also will probably be taking them away, and Benilde and myself will be looking at them about how we can respond to you. So we have some little white cards that you can write on. When you are writing, I will carry on talking because we do not have lots of time, and just carry on writing and we will collect them in. Thank you. Okay.
A la entrada les dieron un pedacito de papel, entonces pueden escribir aquí la pregunta más importante que tengan sobre la tutoría. Este es un insumo muy importante, no los vamos a poder leer todas, pero el invitado quiere llevarse como las preguntas que tenga el público y va a leer algunas de ellas para su ejercicio. Entonces van a escribir y las personas que están en los pasillos van a recoger sus preguntas que tengan escritas, sus preguntas, sus miedos, sus esperanzas, lo que quieran compartir. Sí, esto va a ser un insumo para a lo largo de la conferencia para que él pueda ir como respondiendo las expectativas que ustedes tengan. Entonces vamos a dar unos minutitos.
Okay. So I will carry on talking. If you can write your questions or hopes and fears, that would be great. If you need more time to think about this, you can write them later during the morning. Okay, so I wanted to start by thinking about what at risk means. And arguably, all students are at risk, yes? So at one point or another in a student's journey in a university, then there will often be problems, there will often be issues. That means they may be at risk of dropping out of the course or not achieving. So it is a fact of life, yeah? It also can be complex. In English, this word is called intersectional. So this means there are many different factors involved, yes? And they do sometimes involve things that we cannot control. So I am saying this because I want, well, let me say the next part, sorry. However, we need to and can provide holistic support. So we need to do this as much as we can, I believe. However, I think we also need to be kind to ourselves as tutors because this is a complex thing and we cannot control everything. Many tutors I talk to get very frustrated that they can't control everything about a student's life, but it's not always possible. Two stories, two examples to illustrate this. I had two students, I have made up their names, not real names, but they are real students. So Peter was the perfect student on paper, yeah? Very good grades, coming into the university, in his documentation, the perfect student. However, a big issue came up that I could not influence, and he left the university, and my retention statistics went down. Yeah? So this is hard. But another student, Anna, on paper, the documents, many issues, many barriers to learning, many social problems. However, with holistic support, Anna was successful, she gained a good grade at the end of university, and she was a positive, she progressed onto employment from university. So these two examples show how it is not always predictable, not always easy, but we need to try and provide that particular support. And sometimes we are judged on statistics when our retention and our achievement goes down, but we need to be telling our leaders and thinking about the story behind the statistics as well, the story beneath the headlines as well, and provide that support to make a positive student experience and tell that story. So Oxford Brookes University is not a perfect university, no. No universities are perfect. So please don't think I am saying we are the best at everything. However, compared to where I have been employed previously, they have taken a whole institution approach to tutoring. What do I mean by a whole institution approach to tutoring? The way I've thought about this is like a pyramid, yeah? So we have pyramids, Mexico City, which is good. So it's like a pyramid with 3 different layers. And where I have worked previously, quite often, 1 or 2 of these layers have been missing. And therefore, tutoring has arguably not been as effective as it could be, okay? Just to take you through the different layers, at the top, clear governance. So who is accountable, who is answerable for tutoring? This again is a complex question because tutoring in the faculty is answerable, leadership of the university is also answerable, but at Oxford Brookes, in 2 or 3 years ago, we made the decision to make the Pro-Vice Chancellor for Education, this is the job role in the UK, maybe similar to these people's roles, to be ultimately responsible for tutoring. People underneath were doing the work, but they were responsible. And we also have a project team, only 4 of us. I am one of the project team, who are from different areas of the university, but they organize tutoring from the center in terms of the quality, yeah? We also have senior advisors, which are the same as tutors, okay? So we have 2 faculties now. We have 2 senior tutors in each faculty. And what this means, they are senior lecturers, like me, but they also have some of their time devoted to coordinating tutoring and particularly the quality and evaluation of tutoring, yeah? And we introduced a new strategy and policy in September 2023. And I was with the project team, I created the policy, which is like a promise to students, really, and how we might fulfill that promise. The second layer is having an effective organizational model, operations, and systems. So tutorials being timetabled to monitor attendance in tutorials, but also monitor attendance in subject teaching sessions, which informs the tutorials, obviously. Allocation of tutees, this is interesting. How many tutees do you have? How many? 10? Higher? 30? Higher? 45? 50? You win there. This is a difficult challenge, but at Oxford Brookes University, we have tried to make the number of tutees, students, per tutor consistent. Yeah? We tried to say a maximum of 30, but it's difficult. In the policy, because of politics and consensus, the sentence in the policy ended up being an equitable number of tutees per tutor. But this is an issue. Hopefully the methods I'm going through today, you can still apply even if you have high numbers of tutees, but it is a challenge, I will admit. We have procedures for monitoring progress and referral, and importantly, how do we evaluate tutoring as well, making it clear. And the way we evaluate tutoring is the senior advisors all use a standard template document for evaluating with the same criteria so that you're getting a consistent picture across the university from all the faculties about the measures against which tutoring is measured. Yeah, the criteria against which tutoring is measured. The third one at the bottom of the pyramid, because it is the foundation of it all really, is our support of tutors. Do we support tutors to support students? Okay, so professional development, CPD in English, continuing professional development, guidance and support for personal tutors. And this is something that I have led on. And we give guidance and support online, web-based. We also introduce mandatory training, compulsory, yeah? So all tutors, whether they are tutoring this year or not, if they are academics who teach, we have tried to say it's compulsory you do training. Some people happy about this, some people not happy about this. But that enables you to convey the minimum standards that we think each tutor needs to try and achieve. And of course, it's a challenge because tutors like you are also researchers, also teachers, also need to publish. But by providing consistent messages and mandatory training, hopefully it helps with the role. I facilitate a professional development program of 5 sessions per year on particular themes. And a lot of those sessions are very closely related to at-risk, supporting at-risk students, yeah? I said I was going to talk a bit more about what at-risk means. I think we need to ask the question, at risk of what? Is it completion, failure, which is more academic? Is it at risk of poor well-being and harm, which is more pastoral and personal? And to realize that these two things are often interrelated, yeah? So there is an institutional imperative on this side, but there is also a student experience, personal imperative on the other side. And the two things are often related. In Britain, the United Kingdom, also we have been tasked, required, to try and address inequality so that all students, regardless of background, are supported to access, succeed, and progress. The two-word phrase in English this has become that people know now commonly, it's called widening participation, which means increasing the number of students and looking at areas that are socially, economically more deprived to increase the number of people from those areas coming to university, for example. It's called widening participation. We still have different outcomes for student groups. They are not equal, yeah? So these groups here, economic disadvantage, restricted educational background, race, ethnicity, students with a disability, the outcomes are still lower. So there is a requirement to try and address this inequality. And tutoring at-risk students is part of that. The actual word, or two words, at-risk, came from a publication called A Nation at Risk, 1983, and it has been used since for groups of students. Sometimes at-risk is connected to or used interchangeably with other terms like non-traditional students and demographic labels, which I've already mentioned. Also in Britain, every university, we charge our students money to come to university. They have to pay tuition fees. So every university that charges a fee has to produce an access and participation plan, which shows how they are trying to widen access and widen participation. So this is a big part of supporting at-risk students. We also recently, in 2023, had an equality of opportunity risk register, which is based on research, and it gives 12 sector-wide risks that can affect students at 3 stages: access, on-course, and progression. And universities are asked to consider how they how these risks might affect their students, and to use data to see how they can understand how they can support students most effectively. At risk, using data, using labeling, using groups of students needs to be handled carefully. I mentioned earlier about sometimes we can assume too much and treat students like just groups, homogenize. So there is a balance. We need to use data, but we need to be careful it doesn't prejudice our view of a particular student, yeah? So a warning, do not profile students, try not to overlabel, do not stereotype. The data shows it's important to support, but we should not profile or homogenize students. What does the research say about at-risk students? A very big study in the UK was carried out in 2 phases, 2012 and 2017. It involved over 20 different universities, and the research was trying to identify what works, what is effective for student retention and success. And overall, the headlines of this big piece of research, mixed methods research, was that compared to previous years and decades, we need to be proactive and preemptive in supporting students. We need to anticipate issues and use as much data and information as we can. In the past, tutoring was just, does a student have a problem? If they have no problem, fine, bye, see you later. If they have a problem, then we give all our energies to this. Now it is saying we need to be proactive in our support of all students. And the graphic on the right-hand side of this screen just shows the themes that embody effective interventions. And I won't read every word, but the main headlines are that they have an academic purpose, they are embedded or mainstream within the program of a student's overall program, and they are ongoing, and they are monitored and followed up. So if this is what the research says, I'm going to take you through some methods that are hopefully embody or represent that preemptive, proactive approach. And these are the sections: background characteristics of students, tools to keep your students on track to succeed, how may we categorize risk and document it, how do we set boundaries, this is an important topic for tutors, providing a clear process for tutors for contacting and second process for referral and signposting, a curriculum for tutorials, so what is the content of tutorials, yeah? And also how we may use data. Another phrase in English we use for is sometimes called learning analytics. So first thing, background characteristics. Who are your advisees? This graphic on the left-hand side is taken from a webpage that we provide to tutors that asks them to consider the kinds of effective support for students who have particular background characteristics, like learning needs. In Oxford Brookes University, they have something called an inclusive support plan if they have declared a learning need. When students do not declare, this can be a challenge, yeah? But we still need to have an awareness of different learning needs. Sometimes students repeat the year. Sometimes students come from other countries, obviously. In England, we have many different countries, our students, and different cultural differences. So these give tutors ideas about how to approach sensitively students with particular background characteristics. And this, on the right-hand side, just comes from something I have written with other authors about the overlap between student characteristics, cultural economic factors, and home life. This is where it becomes complex, intersectional, but things we can be aware of can be useful. Moving on to tools to keep your students on track. We can run at-risk meetings where you discuss student progress as a team within the faculty. We categorize at risk, which is about identifying the likelihood of students not passing. Documenting at risk is useful, and I'm going to show you on a future slide how you might do this. How do you categorize different levels of risk? And then a live document where you assign students to a level of risk. But this can change during the year, so it's a live document. One-to-ones with students, so effective one-to-ones to discuss progress and set review targets. A progress discussion with student, using electronic systems to record feedback from teachers, and then also importantly, using electronic systems to celebrate when students have excelled, and also to document where we have a concern about them. So the first example of the document that I mentioned to you is to categorize at risk. And Calzagno et al. In 2017 suggest identifying at risk as early as we can. So in the getting to know you stage of working with students. And here is an example of a table that you can use to categorize at risk. We have 4 different levels of risk: outstanding, no risk, medium, and high. You could use a traffic light system. This could be red, amber, green. This could be blue, maybe, outstanding. And here is an example of criteria. Meeting and exceeding targets, 95% plus percentage attendance and punctuality, excellent engagement in class, all assignments submitted, and the background characteristics are not negatively impacting on progress. I have left this part of the table blank on purpose for you to think about what phrases or characteristics you might use to complete the table, because this is for the department or maybe the university to decide. Yeah? The second main document I mentioned was an example live at-risk document. These are not real students, but they have, I tried to use Mexican names. Yeah, so Isabella and Santiago and Valentina. And here is, I will not read every, have we got a Santiago in the room? Any Santiago? Yes. Okay, welcome. This is not you, but someone with the same name. Isabella, Valentina? No, it's not typical name. Okay, sorry. So here are some reasons for the category, repeating the year, failing modules, low attendance. Santiago, medium. Good previous study record, 67%, some marks have been low. Valentina, outstanding, very good attendance, attainment consistent, wants to achieve higher. And this I have left blank, but you can think about actions to assign for these individual students. And as I mentioned, Santiago maybe becomes outstanding, might move up to low risk or outstanding. Okay, the next important topic to think about is setting boundaries. Okay, so it's a difficult challenge as a tutor because there are many issues to do with students. I've talked about home life, cultural factors, socioeconomic, but we are employed as tutors. We are not employed as mental health specialists. We are not employed as counselors. However, sometimes we have to use counseling skills maybe, yeah? That can be difficult sometimes because we sometimes need to refer students to other services that the university has, okay? One way to do this is to think about boundaries. So the main boundary, by identifying the type of boundaries we have, the main boundaries, that can help us set them and recognize them. And the main one really is expertise boundary. This is where you do not have the expertise and other people in the institution are employed for these purposes. And there's some examples here on the right-hand side. And this can be difficult because you have to refer the student to someone else, but they still belong to you because you are their tutor, but it is not within your job description, yeah? There is nothing wrong with having mental health training. Some of our tutors do mental health training, but it's not required, it's not mandatory. But it's good for them to be aware and to be aware of learning needs like autism, yeah? But we need to think about where that boundary is. The boundary is not always easy to draw, it's difficult, but we need to think about it. The other main ones are time. Yeah, if you have many tutees, how much of your time can you devote to one student or another? Yeah, and then sometimes we have behavioral boundaries we need to set about professional behavior. And here are some examples. Be kind to yourself. You can influence behavior, but you can't always control it. Yeah, but you need to inform students sufficiently. They have a responsibility to meet expectations, okay? And then also sometimes we need to set boundaries between students themselves. This can be important. So setting expectations in tutorials and subject teaching sessions is very important. Moving on, at Oxford Brookes, we believed we needed to provide our tutors with clear processes. And the next two slides have flowcharts, but the writing is very small. So I've created this slide with bigger text, font sized, so you can read it. And the main two processes are actions for each year or semester, including an induction tutorial, scheduled tutorials in addition to bookable drop-in appointments. So at Oxford Brookes, we are a Google institution. You use Google here, Benilde. She's not listening. Use Google. So use Gmail. So use Google Calendar. So I don't know if you do this, but we have every tutor needs to provide a link, and students can click on and book a 30-minute appointment for spontaneous meetings. But you only put on your calendar when you're available. You do a bit of this? Okay. In addition to that, we have a minimum number of scheduled tutorials every semester, yeah? What was I talking about? Log attendance, if there are concerns, use data, and use the referral process if you are still concerned, yeah? In addition to this, we provide across the university contact emails. So they are templates that tutors can use to send to students, but they can change the wording to adapt to their cohort or their subject area. Yeah, and they are also differentiated by level of student. Okay, and you'll see that in the video in a minute. Second one, referral process. Is support needed? Is the support within your remit? Is it within your boundary? If it's no, is the student at risk of immediate harm? If yes, emergency support. If no, use other university support services. And the other university support services, I always have someone attending from another service in my tutor training. So they can talk to my colleague who is a counselling manager. They can talk to my colleague who is an inclusive support manager. So we try and make everything connected, but it can be difficult. The flowcharts are on the next 2 pages. So these are links to standard online forms that the tutor clicks on, so there is a record. And this is the referral one. So it looks a bit complicated, but it's the best we could do, but it's difficult. And this is a student welfare referral form. There's a consistent format for this form. It's an online form, so that we've got a record of this. Moving on, but related to that point, is to have a curriculum for tutorials. So we are trying to position tutoring as another form of teaching and equally important. This can be difficult because tutoring usually doesn't have a qualification attached, yeah? But we are trying to say it should almost be equally important. If it is equally important, if tutoring is teaching, what do tutors teach, yeah? What is the content? And I think you're doing some work here at UNAM on this. But we had 3 key themes: supporting diversity, flexible. Flexibility, yeah? I always use the comparison of twins in the university. One goes to engineering, one goes to psychology. Will their personal tutoring be exactly the same? No. But will they be broadly equitable? Will they yeah. So this is the important thing, and we sometimes call this, so we have a curriculum that is like a framework, but there is freedom within the framework, it's flexible. Yeah? Next, we will watch a video. So magically, this is going to happen, I think. The video is about the curriculum and the Google site. Thank you. Do I need to press play? No.
Welcome to the Academic Advising Google site, a resource designed to support and enhance advising practice at Oxford Brookes and to host the new academic advising curriculum. On the site, you'll find everything you need across a semester, from the tutorial request form and link to logging attendance, to quick reference tools like the Academic Advising at a Glance flowchart and the referral process. It also includes adaptable email templates, which are organized by student level and specific points in the academic year. These are provided from foundation through to postgraduate, with 2 templates per semester to save you time and to remind students of key services at specific times. For induction, there are ready-to-use activities and resources to help new students settle in during week 0 and to get to know you as their advisor. The site also provides detailed guidance on working with different student groups. These include international students, student parents, and those with caring responsibilities, amongst others. Central to the Google site is the academic advising curriculum, built around 3 themes: personal and academic literacy, transition and making the most of university, and careers, employability, and pre-professional identity. Resources are tailored to each student's level and stage of the semester. Simply select the level and semester. Choose early or late semester. Then explore the theme that best fits your students' needs, whether in one-to-one or group settings. For mixed-level groups, you'll also find ideas for managing tutorials effectively. There is a series of trigger questions, as well as suggested activities and resources to use with students at a scheduled tutorial. The trigger questions and resources have also been added to Google Slides, which you are free to download and adapt. The curriculum is designed to strengthen advising relationships and to promote more meaningful conversations beyond the routine "how's everything going" approach. If you'd like to learn more about the principles behind the development of the curriculum and how to use it with your advisees, you'll find further information on the site itself.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So at Oxford Brookes, personal tutoring is academic advising. Many universities in the UK use the phrase academic advising, but it is the same as personal tutoring. In the USA, it's usually called academic advising as well. So it's the same thing. This slide is just you've already seen on the video really, but just gives you an idea of the messages that we give to students through the visuals, through posters and digital images about advice made for you, skills for your future, connecting and networking, your go-to for academic guidance and building confidence. And the key literature about encouraging a sense of belonging. I forgot to mention this with the What Works research as well. The key headline coming out of that research was that a sense of belonging is at the heart of student retention and success. A sense of belonging, and the human side of education comes first. So the word belonging, you heard of this? Yeah? Obviously it is a word generally in language, but in education, now this is used a lot within UK education. And I think it just shows how the pastoral, personal side of things is very important. This was the key outcome of Liz Thomas's research in 2012 and 2017. Okay, so I'll move on. We're going to move on to use of data or learning analytics, which is sometimes referred to as, and we can think about data that we have on student characteristics. For example, economic disadvantage, educational background, race, ethnicity, disability, or other factors like are they mature students. This is background characteristics. We can also get data on student diagnostics. So we can, at the beginning of programs and tutorials, measure, to an extent, students' level of academic confidence, their learning behaviors, and, to an extent, their level of well-being, their feeling of well-being. So this is student diagnostic data. Then, when they are on the program, we can also use data to measure engagement, okay? So, for example, attendance, attainment, which means level of grades, yeah? Library use, access of support services and online support services. All of these added together can give us a student learner profile that can be useful to inform our tutoring. Okay? Some more information on learning analytics or using data. It helps tutors to gain awareness and deeper insights, to understand their context, and to adapt or tailor our support. You can collect data points, attendance at taught sessions, use of the virtual learning environment. I hope you understand this, but we use Moodle, yeah. Sometimes there's other ones like Canvas and others. And time using the online library or downloads. It's important to think about it as a proxy for engagement. So it's not exactly the same, but it is a representative of engagement. We make assumptions about levels of engagement based on how we measure it. So I think this is important to recognize, but you can decide on a baseline level. For example, the 25% lowest engagers and 25% lowest attenders, does this mean that you make an intervention? This is something that the department, the team, faculty, maybe university can decide on. We still need to have collaborative discussions between tutors and tutees based on the data and try and make meaning together rather than students feeling policed or monitored. Yeah? And this links to the last point. It's a warning. Be cautious about using too predictively because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, which is a phrase we use in English. Hopefully you understand. Also, tutors need training on use. So at Brookes, we produced a guide on how to use learning analytics as a tutor advisor. These two slides are just images to give you an example of the kind of how the learning analytics information is presented, and you have things like inclusive support plan here and level of attendance. And also you have graphs that we use within learning analytics for the level of engagement on virtual learning environment and online resources, and you can filter that by duration by module. Yeah? This graph also shows this as a bar chart, sorry, as a bar chart. That's similar information. Lastly, on use of data or learning analytics, myself and other colleagues have written about how tutors may find it useful to use dashboard systems or use software, on learning analytics. And these give you different features of dashboard systems and gives you different information about why it might be useful. Because of time, I'm not going to read every word, but Benilde will make the presentation available to you after today, and you can look at it then, read it in your own time. Okay, moving on. Hopefully, if we are preemptive and proactive, hopefully many concerns and issues with students are avoided, But there are always going to be some issues we can't avoid. And this slide gives you some actions for when we need to re-engage students who are at risk, okay? So we have things like a positive learning conversation to uncover underlying reasons for low attendance, engagement, or completion, and when to use it, a review of this conversation, a student progress report or review to effect a change in engagement, and then sometimes, hopefully not very often, but we do have conflict, We have conflict sometimes between students, we have conflict maybe between tutors and students, and this is where it's important to run mediation processes, sometimes called restorative justice, which is how you build the bridges, and there are certain quite strong rules that you need to keep to for meetings like this, so that hopefully you can reach a resolution where the two parties who are disagreeing feel heard and can also move forward in a positive professional way, okay? Student personas, this text is very small, so sorry, you'll need to look at it later, but also in our training of tutors, we use student personas. This is fictional, Sam is not real, but the issues are maybe quite real, So we give our tutors an example of some of Sam's background and how he's feeling about it, also some of his challenges, he has a mental health issue, what his motivations are, so the positive side of things, and other considerations. Other information about Sam is his attendance rate. It's a bit above the average. He also has an inclusive support plan for his learning need. And what we do with the tutors is we ask them these guiding questions. What barriers to learning might Sam have? How would you plan and discuss with Sam in a one-to-one tutorial? What advice, information, suggestions for additional support could you provide? How would you conduct the tutorial inclusively? And here is kind of an example answer for that, a plan for tutorials with Sam, and it gives you, I won't read every question, but it gives you some ways of phrasing things that acknowledges Sam's challenges, but does not do so in a way that hopefully makes him feel stereotyped. It's handled sensitively, And the student personas are useful also because we work with our program teams, because I work in teacher education, so I work with different program teams across the university, and when they design their programs, we hold meetings and workshops with them about whether that program is as inclusive as it can be. So we say to them, if you had a student like Sam, would your subject materials, would your program handbook be accessible to a student like Sam or not, and why? And have a discussion, supportive discussion about that. Okay, so almost coming to the end. Summary. In summary then, we have challenges, I think we need to acknowledge them. In the UK, in higher education at the moment, it's a good place to work, but there are many challenges. There are challenges of cost cutting, there are challenges of job insecurity. So there are definitely some challenges. And what we also have is, through widening participation, we have increasing numbers of students with increasingly diverse needs. And sometimes that increase has not, the professional development and support of staff has not kept pace with that increase. So we're trying to meet that more positively than we used to, So we have increasingly diverse student needs, we have high workloads, we are a limited resource, and we need to balance priorities, But hopefully today I've been giving you some possible solutions for these challenges, to meet these challenges, to have a whole institution approach in terms of governance, systems, and training, to be preemptive and proactive, and to have consistent monitoring methods. One more thing is I wanted to just talk to you about what we did at Oxford Brookes And the question, moving on to the question, how can you implement and enhance personal tutoring for student success at UNAM or in your department? So has anyone heard of a SWOT analysis? Yes, good. Some nods. So a SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, which is internal, opportunities and threats, which are external. This is an example at Oxford Brookes, at the early stages of us improving tutoring, yeah? What were our strengths? We had some staff with expertise in tutoring and coaching. We were also lucky enough to have student partners who are students, but they are paid. So we use them in lessons, lectures. So this was a strength. The weaknesses, at that time, it was not clear who governed and evaluated personal tutoring. But now, maybe now, it is clearer. We did not have systems, for example, timetabling, that worked very well for tutoring. They have improved a bit, but we're still trying to improve them. Opportunities were, through effective tutoring, we can improve the university ranking. People have different opinions on league tables and ranking. Yeah, you know what I mean? So Oxford, the other Oxford is #1 in the world, I think. You know, a lot of the American universities, Stanford, etc., these are high, right? So you can have different opinions because we're always measured on this, which people have different opinions about, which I understand. But by improving the student experience through these things, you can possibly improve the student university ranking, and this enables more money, which enables, arguably, more job security. And also an opportunity to professionally develop staff. So within the UK now, there has been a development where tutoring has a separate recognized professional qualification alongside your teaching qualification. And if you professionally recognize your tutors, then this raises the status and the value, okay? So it can be useful for promotion, and it can be useful to just improve tutoring generally because you have to write an assignment that enables you to get that qualification. The threats on the negative side externally were restructuring and resource limitations. We are all limited resource, and we have limited resources. So how can we work smarter to make this effective? So this is the example of Oxford Brookes. What would you at UNAM write in these boxes? What would be your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to implement effective tutoring for student success? And we don't have time, but for you to think about later, it's an extension of the previous slide, really, but individually thinking, what things need to happen for personal tutors to implement this work, and what things need to happen for the department to implement this work. And again, the final question really, what happens next? What steps will you and the department take? So these are the resources I've used in today's presentation that might be useful for you to look at afterwards. But the only thing left to say is thank you so much for listening so attentively and quietly and patiently. And thank you for making me so welcome. And I hope that was useful. And we now have a chance for questions. Thank you very much. And I think a round of applause for our technical support. Woo! Very good. Thank you.
Bueno, agradecemos al Dr. Walker por su exposición. Y ahora vamos a dar un breve espacio. Si alguien quiere hacer alguna pregunta, algún comentario, puede levantar la mano. Vamos a pasar el micrófono y también si quieren entregar sus papelitos para que el Dr. Walker se los pueda llevar. Y entonces la dinámica es que vamos a dar la palabra y aquí nos van a ayudar en la mesa con la traducción, así que la pueden hacer en español o en inglés, as you wish. Y listo, entonces tenemos por acá una mano levantada. Por favor, quienes quieran, va a dar los turnos, 1, por allá 2, 3 y 4 personas para comenzar, para que el tiempo no se nos vaya. Entonces les agradecemos su comentario, su pregunta brevemente, para que podemos ir recopilando 1 y 2. ¿Qué te parece, doctora Benilde? 2 preguntas y para ir respondiendo. ¿Sí? Vale, entonces adelante.
So mine is a very long question, so I don't think you're going to have the chance to get 2 at the same time, since mine includes like 30 at the same time. So the first one is, how does the tutor program work at Oxford Brookes? I mean, is it a professional whose only job is to being a tutor? Is it a full-time teacher of a given subject offering his spare time for tutoring, or how does it work? Because that might be a huge difference between your tutor program and our tutor program, since ours is voluntary.
It's a good question, but
the second one, the second person, yeah.
La siguiente pregunta es si allá en Oxford consideran la tutoría par como una forma de coadyuvar los esfuerzos con limitados recursos, y en el caso de universidades con una gran matrícula como es la nuestra, ¿qué opciones podrían implementarse para cubrir esta gran demanda con estas amenazas?
Ok, yo creo que con esas dos preguntas, si tú quieres traducírsela, doctora.
Okay, thank you. So, question number one. Do you want to translate as I speak, or? Oh, of course. I was forgetting. Of course. Sorry. I've still not had enough sleep. Sorry. So the first question is, it is voluntary role, really. I mean, voluntary is not exactly 100% correct, but we do have the same model and structure as you, I believe, which is that no one is a full-time personal tutor. They are lecturers who have personal tutoring on their timetable as part of their overall role. Yeah? So you are right that this sometimes causes, I think you are suggesting, this sometimes causes difficulty because it is a minority importance. It is a subsidiary role compared with subject teaching. And that is very true, but it's something we're trying to do through this to say that it is equally important because it is so central to student retention and success. So we do not have professional tutors. One thing that we do have increasingly in British universities is we do now sometimes have roles created where their only purpose is to carry out these kinds of activities. They're usually paid lower than lecturers, but it is their whole role. We are lucky at Oxford Brookes, we have we have a role called student support coordinators. So they do work with personal tutors. But we have had to do quite a lot of work to clarify the differences between them because in different faculties they're used very differently. So I agree with you, it makes a very big difference. I think if they're professional or not, I think some of the solutions again are trying to recognize tutoring as a form of teaching that's equal to other forms of teaching. And this can help. But hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
Any more? It's okay?
The second question.
I think if pandemic has taught us something, it's that
Excuse me.
mental
Disculpa, ¿puedes usar el
I'm sorry.
micrófono para que se escuche en la transmisión? Muchas gracias.
So if pandemic has taught us something, is that mental health is really important, and so is tutoring, which is quite related to it. So it could be a good opportunity for us to stress how important it is to treat a tutor just as important, to say that a tutor is just as important as a teacher of any given subject.
Yeah, I think it's really important to do so, and it's a possibility. I think, so for example, I did my own teacher training qualification in 2001. Personal tutoring was not mentioned, really. Now, I do the same teaching of the course I used to be a student on, and we have made it much more important. Because you are quite right, it needs to be important. It's also a challenge. The main qualification we have for higher education teachers in the UK, but it is also global, is called Fellowship of Advanced HE, which Benilde mentioned. Arguably, the framework that is used in that qualification does not mention tutoring enough. But a new framework, they revised the framework in 2023, and support of students is now more important within that framework. In addition, we have a organization called UCAT, which is UK Advising and Tutoring, They offer a framework that recognizes the particular skills and competencies of personal tutors as distinct but also complementing teaching skills. So these are two ways that in the UK we've tried to increase status and value, because you need to reward your tutors for this activity. And Advanced HE Fellowship is available globally, so to Mexican colleagues like yourself, and the UK is too. So this is something Benilde and I were talking about yesterday, for example, so maybe these are some things to explore together. Oh yes, I'm answering another question. Oh yes. So this was a question about UNAM is a very, very big university, so how do you make personal tutoring work when you have so many students? Is this right?
Yeah.
Y si la tutoría par es una opción que ustedes consideran en la institución, si consideran que también sería algo conveniente en esta la gran matrícula, o qué otras opciones hay para fortalecer esta tutoría personal o el diferente tamizaje que se haga para estos casos.
Yes, thank you. It is a big challenge when we have very high numbers of students like this colleague here. And I've talked about effective one-to-ones. This is sometimes not possible in the time that we have if we have very high caseload, is a word we use, of students. I think we can, however, apply some of these principles to group sessions also. So we also train our tutors in coaching techniques. Coaching techniques tend to be most relevant to one-to-ones, but however, you can adapt it and use it within groups. So I think the other thing I would say is we have a policy for academic advising, personal tutoring, which is like a promise to the students. When there are very high numbers of students, can the policy be delivered to this? So I think it's about working with managers and leaders to say, this is our promise, can we do it with high numbers? And I think there are ways to do it by using group tutorials. I also think, oh, you asked about peer tutoring. Yes, I think this can be an excellent solution to this challenge. And we have something in which quite a lot of research has happened in the UK called PASS, which is Peer Assisted Student Support, I think. So this is a model that's quite interesting that we can make you aware of if this will be useful. So I think peer support can be also really useful in using student partners, because we have a limited resource, but we are also charged with the task of providing high quality student experience. And we need to try and think how these two things can work together. Yeah.
Muchas gracias. Vamos con la tercera pregunta. Sí.
Okay. First of all, thank you. The question that I wanted to ask is, well, the main issue that I found with with people who I've been tutoring is that they mostly have problems with teachers. So as a teacher, it's very difficult to handle this idea of you are a teacher, so you have to technically talk to your coworkers about something that the students may believe that it's incorrect, or they are doing something that is not supposed to be done. And how do you handle this idea of you're a coworker, you're not technically their boss? And because I found like one of the reasons why a lot of us don't really want, or they don't really want to go into tutoring, is because they mostly get into fights with other coworkers and it becomes like a big deal, right? So what can we do? You mentioned this thing about listening to both parts, but what happens when the teacher is absolutely like, they don't want to even consider the idea that they might be incorrect, and they're not open to even open the conversation. And you are not a boss, so technically it becomes even more difficult because your position is not something that is secure or paid or something that they can even respect. And the teacher may be like, I don't mind, I don't care, I don't care what this student may say, this is the correct thing. So what can we do about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think the positive learning, informal mediation meeting I talked about is an example of the kinds of processes that you can undergo to try and resolve these issues informally. And I think you need to try and resolve these issues informally before they reach a formal stage. It is difficult because we need to support our colleagues, and we need to be saying to the student, okay, I hear you. I hear your problem, I have recognized it. However, my colleague is not here to reply for themselves. They have no right of reply. And so you cannot be drawn into necessarily giving a judgment. And I think all these things you try and resolve them informally. However, if a student, for example, really is not satisfied, this is the reason we have complaint processes. I think you need to try and avoid complaint processes, but we have a complaint process and policy. And it is your job only to try and resolve this informally. And if the student is not satisfied, it's something that they will have to raise formally through a complaints or grievance process or policy, yeah? But I know it's difficult, but this is a lesson for life, yeah? Teachers have different personalities. We all have different personalities. Sometimes with tutors, students, they don't like the approach of a teacher at the beginning, but then they get used to it during the year. Because some teachers they think are more strict than other teachers. But as long as they are being inclusive and not discriminatory, this is okay. We are teachers, we have different personalities, we're individuals. When you are in the middle of this, it's a challenge. This is the job of the tutor, but you need to look after yourself to try and say informal, but you have structures behind you, and you have leaders behind you who should support you in this. And the only other thing I would say is, with the tutors who don't care, it's a difficult challenge for everyone, but we need to have supportive but robust performance management processes. So if a tutor is not meeting, this is one of the reasons we brought in the mandatory training, yeah? The mandatory training has minimum expectations for tutors. If arguably continually a tutor is refusing to do this, they're not meeting those minimum standards, they're not keeping to the policy, it becomes a performance management issue that is not your job to resolve, it is the line manager.
Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Vamos con la siguiente pregunta allá atrás.
Hi, I have one question only for the engagement academic for the students. I think to know how is the engagement academic scale for the students into the classroom is important for the action tutoring. So I know one instrument for measure that scale is the Ultra's words engagement students. And what my question is, is there other instrument for measure the engagement academic into the classroom for the students? I think it's very important to know what is the engagement academic level, what the students for do some actions. That's all my only question.
Thank you very much. So the question is about measuring the engagement of students in tutorials, not about evaluating tutoring. Is that correct? Okay. So the main ways that we measure engagement are the things that I went through in the presentation. So the use of data, the use of learning analytics, and this forming like a student profile. I think the other ways to measure students' engagement with tutorial is also within your retention and attainment and success statistics. So one way that we evaluate tutoring, which links to student engagement with tutorials, is that every team has to meet in a meeting called a subject committee. And in this subject committee, the program leader and the other teachers of the program have to answer why their program is inclusive and how they try and support students holistically as much as possible through a tutoring program. So I think these are all the ways that you can measure their engagement. I think that attendance, if we're honest, I'd be interested to know from you, is attendance at tutorials lower than other teaching? Yeah. So this can be frustrating, can be difficult, but I think there are ways that we can measure student engagement by the more, in English we use the phrase soft measures, hard measures. Soft measures are qualitative information, hard measures is quantitative. But as we know, quantitative information only gives you so much. And I think we need to be measuring levels of confidence and the positivity of the student experience, which in Britain is now acknowledged in the conditions that universities have to meet, ways that we can measure those soft outcomes. Because in the end, for a student like Anna, who I mentioned at the very beginning, it was the soft outcomes that were most important about making her stay at the university and be successful. Hopefully that answers. I'm not sure I answered very well. Okay, thank you.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias. Vamos a dar con esto ya cierra las preguntas. De todas maneras quedan los escritos. Quien quiera dejar sus preguntas escritas será un gran insumo para nuestro presentador. Y para dar cierre formal a esta sesión, le damos la palabra a la maestra Hilda Paredes, jefa de la División de Estudios Profesionales. Maestra, por favor.
Muchísimas gracias. Muy buenas tardes a todos y todas. En nombre de la Facultad de Psicología de la UNAM y del Programa de Aprendizaje, Servicio e Innovación Pedagógica, APSIP, agradezco profundamente su presencia en este encuentro académico realizado el día de hoy. Es un privilegio compartir este espacio con todos y todas ustedes. En la UNAM, la tutoría se ha consolidado como una política institucional que busca acompañar de manera integral las trayectorias de miles de jóvenes. En nuestra facultad tenemos la convicción de que un acompañamiento cercano puede transformar vidas académicas y personales. Las aportaciones del doctor Ben Walker nos invitan a repensar nuestras formas de tutoría, a fortalecer los vínculos con el estudiantado y a reconocer que la tutoría es una estrategia esencial para la permanencia, el bienestar y el desarrollo integral de quienes se encuentran en situación de riesgo académico. Aunque en nuestra universidad y en nuestra facultad vamos avanzando, necesitamos seguir transformando nuestras prácticas, a mirar con más firmeza a los estudiantes en riesgo, a fortalecer la relación tutorial y a integrar la innovación pedagógica, el aprendizaje-servicio y la perspectiva comunitaria en nuestras acciones cotidianas. Agradecemos profundamente al doctor Ben Walker por compartir su trabajo, sus hallazgos y sobre todo la convicción de que una universidad más humana y sensible es posible cuando el acompañamiento se coloca en el centro de la experiencia formativa. Asimismo, reconozco y reconocemos en la facultad la labor de la doctora Benilde García Cabrero, cuyo liderazgo hace posible que actividades como estas se concreten y se mantengan vivas en nuestra agenda académica. Muchísimas gracias. También a todo el equipo de APSIP, al personal docente y administrativo y a todas las personas que colaboraron para llevar a cabo este evento. Su dedicación es el corazón de la actual administración. Agradezco en particular la presencia de directivos de la Dirección General de Orientación Educativa y de directivos de las Escuelas Nacional Preparatorias y de los colegios de Ciencias y Humanidades. Asimismo, a los docentes y estudiantes cuya participación fortalece esta red interinstitucional de acompañamiento. Espero que lo aprendido el día de hoy se traduzca en nuevas formas de cuidado, de cercanía y de compromiso con las trayectorias de nuestros y nuestras estudiantes, así como en proyectos compartidos que sigan fortaleciendo esta comunidad. Por mi raza hablará el espíritu. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, si nos regalan unos minutitos más, entonces vamos a hacer entrega de un presente para el doctor Walker y una constancia por su participación. Okay. Perfecto, entonces, okay. Listo, entonces en nombre de la Facultad de Psicología damos por cerrado esta sesión. Muchísimas gracias por su asistencia y que tengan todos un feliz día. Para terminar vamos a hacer un Goya, entonces si se ponen de pie. Gracias. Listo.
México, Pumas, Universidad.
Goya, Goya, cachu cachurra, ra, cachu cachurra, ra. Goya, Universidad.